and through prayer, when the imam returns, he will usher in this sort of messianic age. There'll be a 2-year period perhaps of chaos and then a messianic age. Not dissimilar than some Jewish and Islamic, other Islamic and Christian perspectives. Ahmadinejad adheres to the teachings of Ayatollah Muhammad Taqi Mesdi Yazdi. And these are people who believe that through actions, not through just prayer, as was traditional in Shia Islam for centuries, that through actions you can bring about the return of the imam. One of Ahmadinejad's first acts as president was giving $17 million for the Jakarta mosque, which he believes, with a small clique of people that are sort of behind him ideologically, that this is where the Mahdi, when he emerges, he will sit and sort of hold court. When Ahmadinejad spoke at the United Nations when he was in New York, he said, and I quote, "I felt the atmosphere suddenly change, and for those 27 or 28 minutes, the leaders of the world did not blink. It seemed as if a hand was holding them there, and it opened their eyes to receive the message from the Islamic Republic." He then went on to say how he was, how this place was, there was a green light, and sort of all these things. The point is that there's a messianic fervor that they believe that to wipe Israel off the map will sort of bring about the return of the Mahdi. What's also very important, when Ahmadinejad said in 2005 that he's going to wipe Israel off the map, and the world reacted, it's almost like this situation where when you take a frog and throw it into a boiling pot of water, the frog will be shocked and jump out of the water. If you take a frog with cold blood and you put it in lukewarm water and you slowly turn up the heat until the water is boiling, the frog will die in the pot. It won't react and jump out. And in a sense, I'm afraid this is exactly what's happening in terms of Iran's messianic regime's drive to wipe Israel off the map and to destroy it. The rhetoric coming out of the regime has moved from delegitimization to a form of dehumanization. Ahmadinejad speaks about Jews, and it's very important. Some people on the left like to distinguish between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. One thing about the regime, and I really appreciate about them, is that they're direct, they're straight, they're honest, and they're consistent. They speak of Jews, Zionists, and Israelis. Ahmadinejad spoke about how Jews were a filthy germ and a savage beast, that Israel was a cancerous tumor and a stain on the garment of the Islamic world. The list goes on. I can read quotes for hours of what he's been saying. One other very telling, I think very dangerous element of the regime. I was recently in Geneva during the Durban II Review conference last year, a year ago, and Ahmadinejad was the only world leader to come to the conference and speak to the General Assembly. And if you go back and you read the text of his speeches, he speaks in the narrative of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, if people don't know, was a 19th century forged document that emerged in France or in Russia, and it spoke about how the Jews were conspiring to take over the world and to control banks and governments and the like. What's very important about dehumanization and genocidal movements is that it begins with ideas and it begins with words. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion paved the way, justified and paved the way for the extermination of the Jews during the Shoah, during the Holocaust. That the Shoah didn't begin with the concentration camps and the railroad tracks going to the camps. It began with ideas. And these ideas permeated European society and played a key role in the dehumanization and marginalization of Jewish people that created the situation, that made the situation ripe for the barbarity of the Holocaust. Today, the Iranian revolutionary regime is the major exporter, and amazingly enough, of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. When Ahmadinejad speaks in international places like the United Nations, and amazingly, he spoke on Yom HaShoah, the day of memorializing, of remembering the people who perished in the Holocaust. In the United Nations, an institution that emerged from the ashes of the Second World War and the Holocaust. Am Yom HaShoah, he spoke in the narrative of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. So here is a revolutionary Islamic, not Islam, not Muslim, but Islamic political social movement that is using the most pernicious form of European, Christian anti-Semitism, genocidal anti-Semitism, to rid the region and to sort of recreate this sort of mythical, pure Islamic caliphate or entity on Islamic land. And this is, I think, very dangerous and beginning to have traction in many parts of the world. And Iran is at the forefront of exporting the protocols. It's publishing it in places like Turkey and Syria. It's being disseminated widely as well. It's entering into the popular culture, television, music, political discourse in Iran, in places like Lebanon, in Syria, in Egypt, and certainly in Gaza. If you read the Hamas charter, Hamas is also the social movement which is funded by Iran and ideologically supported by Iran. If you read the Hamas charter, it's almost a bit, if it wasn't so tragic and serious, it would almost be like a Monty Python skit. That here you have a Palestinian organization, social movement that is dedicated to the eradication of foreign colonial elements, crusaders and Jews and communists from the region to recreate this sort of golden Palestinian age. And they're using the most pernicious form of European ideas and anti-Semitism in order to do it. And if you read the Hamas charter, the theme that runs through the entire charter is the genocidal beliefs emanating, coming out of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's amazing. This is not the rantings and ravings of a fringe element of the Hamas movement or the military extreme wing of Hamas. This is the raison d'etre. This is the constitution, the covenant between the people of Hamas and God to do what they have to do. And the same is true with Nasrallah and Hezbollah. They are clear in what they're trying to achieve in the eradication of the State of Israel. And this is anti-Semitism. And I don't believe anything could come out of it. I believe, from my perspective, if you may, I come from a human rights tradition. I come from a social democratic background. I was born and raised in Canada, where our healthcare system, I believe, is strong. I went to McGill University, which is relatively close to an Ivy League education. I paid about $120 US a year to go to school. Notions of citizenship, of multiculturalism, of integration are very important, and these are values which I hold to. I was part of the anti-apartheid movement. I fought for indigenous rights in Canada. But the way the indigenous people, the First Nations as we call them, the way they were treated is horrific. I lived in Jerusalem. I'm also proud to be Israeli. I worked with the Palestinian Authority's gender unit with the Ministry of Justice of Israel to promote two-state solution and to promote Israelis and Palestinian urban planners in those days to work together. So I'm not coming from a nationalist or a George Bush perspective. I'm coming from the perspective that I believe in the equality of all people. And I say George Bush, I'll tell you an interesting story why. But I believe in the integration and the equality and the dignity of all people. There's no way that a social movement based on hatred and genocidal anti-Semitism can bring this about. And it begins with Jews, but it never ends with Jews. The treatment of gay people, of women in Gaza today, of all places in Palestinian society, women are finding it more and more difficult to go walking on the street alone. It's because of the morality police that are going around. That this is an issue that we can't turn our back on.